Well, hello again. Andy Anderson, that old man again. We need to look at what's required to heal your nation. We'll be identifying some treatments. We are hearing a lot about the Republican and Democratic parties. However, the Republican Party has many who are secretly supporting the Democratic Party, which is evident if you bother to follow how they vote and act. The Democratic Party is also receiving support from the Independent Party of Bernie Sanders. So Bernie Sanders is no longer supporting his own independent party. The bottom line is, really is only one political party now. That political party is focused on one thing only: how to stay in power and getting rich. The cancer which is proudly supported and financed by you. The biggest challenge I remember to this was called the Tea Party, a real grassroots initiative to challenge the big Democrat and Republican parties. It was looking good. Then it made a fatal mistake. It started relying on the Republican Party for guidance and support, which it was not supposed to do. That cost them what little trust and power they had begun to have. And so that party died. Some went with Democrats, some went with Republicans, others have no longer registered or joined one of the hundreds of other parties. Where do you stand today? The Democratic Party of President John F. Kennedy does not exist today. The few who still unsuccessfully cling to that ideal have already lost. The Democratic Party itself has become the major cancer infection, with many tendrils to be found in all parts of our government, with everything from K-12 schools, universities, all judicials, congressional, and executive branches infected. But you don't have to just give up. We, as the rightful citizens of the great United States of America, still have the treatments needed to destroy this cancer and rescue your nation from being stolen and given over to the communistic nations of the world. History shows it will not be easy, but history shows it can be done by dedicated partisans, just like they did in World War I and World War II. Those people defended their nations. How do you start? First, stop believing all of the TikToks, social media, and news reports you read and hear each day. To learn the truth of what your elected leaders are doing and their activity is public information. You can monitor what they're doing. Is it really what you believe to be right? If not, have you contacted that representative to let them know how you feel? The old saying of the squeaky wheel gets the grease is still valid. The more who contact their representatives, the louder and greater that reaction will be. Are your representatives complying with their oath of office? How can you trust a representative who refuses to say the Pledge of Allegiance to our national flag? How can you trust a representative who turns their back on our national flag? How can you trust a representative who says they hate the nation they were elected to serve? Why weren't they apprehended and charged with insurgency and treason? How can you trust a representative who feels they don't need to obey the laws which Congress has put into place? Are you still with me? If so, I thank you. Where can you begin? If you want to go all out at the beginning, you can initiate a recall for a specific representative. Ballotpedia reports through June 30th, we've identified 205 recall efforts targeting 329 elected officials in 26 states. This is the most recall efforts through the first half of a year, dating back to 2014, and 2024 had the next most recall efforts with 266. We need to stop these failures from even getting into office. It is not that long until November. General elections are going to be here. So we have a lot of hard work ahead of us. To be clear, on my part, anytime I refer to the LGBT, etc., people, I will simply say the alphabet soup people. They seem to add and remove letters all the time. First, get a list of the representatives who won in the primary election in your state commonwealth. Another important piece of information is your voter turnout. I am saddened and embarrassed by the lack of turnout for our 2026 Pennsylvania primary and 2025 general elections. 2026 primary voter turnout in Pennsylvania, 18.0%. Ballots cast, 58,870. Registered voters, 325,839. Less than 20 out of 100 decided who was eligible to even run for office in the state. 2025 general voter turnout. Total, 36.12%. Ballots cast, 116,625. Registered voters, 322,851. Think of this. Less than 40 out of 100 decided who our elected representatives and judges would be. With these kinds of turnouts, I'm surprised we haven't already lost our nation. It is impossible to win a war when a nation only has less than 20% of its people preparing for the war, saying who they think should be running for office, and less than 40% of its people fighting to decide who will be their elected representatives, preventing anyone who says they hate the nation from being elected. How can anyone who hates this nation ever make decisions which would protect and honor the nation? The challenge ahead of us is the toughest battle I know of. How do we get an entire nation to overcome complacency? And how do we get people out of the habit of voting along party lines? You don't have to vote just to vote along the party lines because grandma or your mother and father have always voted that way. This nation is no longer the nation it once was. We have been invaded. We must stop this invasion from changing and destroying your nation. The most precious piece of land is your protected voting booth. You may have heard this before. That piece of land was earned through great leadership and the sacrifice of life and loss of blood. It is the most precious piece of land any citizen will ever stand or sit in. How do we get others to recognize and appreciate that protected piece of land? That is your starting place. You don't need to start any wars at family get-togethers. You can agree to disagree with any opposing views. Don't let politics destroy any part of your life. We go to 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5. Now the end of the commandment is charity, out of a pure heart, and of a good conscience, and of faith unfeigned, from which some, having served, have turned aside unto vain jangling, desiring to be teachers of the law, understanding neither what they say, nor whereof they affirm. But we know that the law is good, if a man use it lawfully, knowing this, that the law is not made for righteous people, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and for sinners, for unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers, murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, for men stealers, for liars, for perjured persons, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine, according to the glorious gospel of the blessed God, who was committed to my trust. Starting next week, we're going to start looking at the steps in more detail that we can take. So may God bless all who will stand and join with me to restore your nation to its greatness. God bless you all.